guiding light is all I know. Through wood and steel, through fire and lace, I'm blessed to walk within your grace. Is to authoritarian. You laid the path before me, you guided every step. Raise the hammer, string the bow, her gift is all I need to know. Through toil and trial, through heart and hand, her grace builds up this mighty land. Is the grass the dead time it's sore? Don't find it empty, our cry is near. By the grace of the goddess we are free. We'll build the land, our hearts within. From dawn till dusk, I work, I strive. With your blessing, I'll survive. The loom, the forge, the sword, the grain in your name, I rise again. Futsa and Nirt, Futsa and Chiel, got Bua, got Tolan, got Trio. In you lies strength, in you lies skill, each victory, each talent, each trial. Great, no skill too small. Your gifts, dear goddess, guide us all. Dandusiolas, milatrua, Ahledulaim, Beda lights into force. Without your light, we have no guide, but with your hand, I'll place abide. String the bow, her gift is all I need to know. Through toil and trial, through heart and hand, her grace builds up this mighty land. Is the grass the dead time it's sore? Don't find me on tear, our greatest deed. By the grace of the goddess we are free. We'll build the land, our hearts within. To walk within your grace, blessed by her grace, forever, forever.
Hello, and welcome back to Pax Dei, The Search for Steel. Tonight's episode, Foundations of Social Change, is part of our series into the look of how societies are formed, how cultures are formed, etc. I'm your host, Daniel, and my avatar, Empire. And today we've reached episode 109, which is going to be lessons from past civilizations, pitfalls and failures. Before that, as I play the game, as always, in the background, I am looking at getting my jewelry up a little bit. And why am I getting my jewelry making up? Because they are going to, they being the developers and the game designers, are going to have a, how should I say it, enchanting skill. And what do you enchant? You enchant lots of stuff, but jewelry being one of them. So we're going to make some jewelry and hopefully go up in level to, or bring out a couple of levels before we run out of materials. As far as the lecture tonight, where hopefully we get a few people in the chat, but in this episode, we will delve into the darker chapters of history. We'll examine historical failures such as rigid caste systems, This is gonna be one of those episodes. Authoritarian regimes and tiered social orders. We often celebrate the successes of great civilizations, but understanding their failures is just as important. And why? Well, because those failures carry crucial lessons about what not to do when building a healthy society. And let me gather one of my first builds. Looks like bronze and amber. I don't know. Amber's hard to come by. Bronze, not so much. Bronze is tin and copper, if you were wondering. Copper, tin, no bronze. So. There's some more amber. Nice. More amber. More bronze. All right, it's this 50% chance here, so hopefully we can do a little bit. Let's craft one and figure out where we are in experience, and then I'll continue with the episode. All right, so I'm going to get about 500 per, and it's not great, but let's do it. All right. So we'll set the stage by exploring a few infamous examples. From the oppressive caste hierarchy of the ancient India to various authoritarian governments that controlled every aspect of life. Through these cases, we'll ask some tough questions. What leads societies to adapt such rigid, oppressive social structures? And perhaps more importantly, how do these systems ultimately hinder progress and social well-being? History shows us that even the mightiest empires and social orders can crumble if they're built on unjust foundations. By scrutinizing the pitfalls, we aim to glean the wisdom that will help us avoid repeating the same mistakes. So let's dive into this journey through time and to uncover the lessons hidden in history's failures. So to understand the social pitfalls, let's first tour some historical examples of societies that institutionalized inequality, or oppression, with often disastrous long-term results. So consider one of the most rigid stratification systems ever. It was the caste system of ancient India. Picture a society where your social status is fixed from birth. No matter how talented or hardworking you are, you cannot rise above your station that you're of your parents. No matter how talented, how hardworking, your parents dictated where you fit in society because they themselves fit into that station. Under this system, people were born into castes ranging from priestly, and I'm going to butcher some of these Indian words, so forgive me. Brahmins, and at the top and down to the outcasts, which were called the untouchables, or outcast, right? Get it? Outcast? Untouchables at the bottom. The Indian caste system was explicitly designed to allow almost no social mobility. If you're born a farmer or a laborer, a Shudra, you would live and die in the same caste, barred from becoming, say, a scholar or a ruler. Intermarriage between castes was forbidden, and families remained in the same strata for generations. This kind of social order created stability for a time, but at the cost of stifling talent and ambition. Imagine growing up knowing that no matter what you do, you can never move up in society. How would that affect your motivations and your community's innovation? It's no surprise that a system like this hindered social progress. A society where millions are blocked from reaching their potential is like a bird trying to fly with clipped wings. And I'll go into the next one is authoritarian regimes, but it seems like man, that didn't take long. And oh, almost got it. So let's take a moment to. All right, I can't do that one. That's silver. Onyx. Let's try onyx. I think I got some onyx. That's blizzard stone. Which one's the onyx? I can't remember. Onyx. There we go. Let's try. A lot of people throw these away, by the way. A little game tip is that's not onyx. They throw this away because for now, jewelry making gets you nothing. It's absolutely nothing. However, I am one who always looks for the bright side. Let's see how much this will give me. Hopefully it's around the 400. Let's go up and see what happens. Silver's hard to come by. There it is. 14 more thousand. And it looks like, yeah, I'm gonna need to go get some amber. Oh, there's hope. But it's silver ingot. That's the hard one to get. Because I don't know any pure silver ores. Let's go ahead and do that for now, and then we'll go into the authoritarian regimes. So another example comes from governments that concentrate power in one ruler or a small elite, demanding absolute obedience. History provides many sobering cases. Consider the totalitarian regime of Pol Pot in Cambodia, which was so brutal it killed up to 30% of its country's population. At the time, it was around 2.8 million people through executions, forced labor, and starvations. Or think of the Soviet Union under Stalin, where policies like collectivization led to mass famines, such as the Holodomor in Ukraine, that killed millions. These regimes sought to engineer society through fear and violence, believing that harsh control would create order. In the short term, they did enforce order, but at an unfathomable human cost and ultimately their own downfall. The Soviet-style authoritarian systems eventually collapsed in the late 20th century due to large economic failures and the inability to sustain their oppressive rule. People living under constant repression either became too downtrodden to contribute meaningfully, or eventually they rose up in revolt. Here's something to ponder. What do you think are the long-term consequences of such rigid social hierarchies and dictatorships? If you answer, I'll give you a moment. If you answered stagnation, resentment, and collapse, history would agree. Rigid hierarchies, whether based on birth or brute force, tend to create a stagnant society where fewer people innovate or invest in the future. Research in sociology backs this up. When people are locked into place, no hope of advancement, societal stagnation sets in, stifling innovation and opportunity for generations. In other words, not only do oppressive systems cause human suffering, they also rob a civilization of the creativity and dynamism it needs to thrive. Wow. That took less time than I thought. So let's check out where we are. All right, so a little bit, and honestly, with I just throw this stuff away. I don't save it. Not anymore. Bronze is pretty, but it doesn't give you any really good weapons or armor. If anybody comes back here and goes, look at all these rings. And that guy's still there, unfortunately. Still leave, but it is what it is, I guess. Still got my view, so I'm kind of happy. Alright, so I know I can't do the silver stuff. Bronze and tourmaline. Looks like I'm doing a lot of bronze. Alright, so I need tin and copper for bronze. Tin. Copper. Let me find some copper here. There we go. Tin and copper. There we go. Let me go make some bronze. You need the smelters for bronze, by the way, if you're following. Didn't need all that much to do, honestly. Bronze. Bronze. Okay. I got a bronze. Weird. Sorry, we'll do some steel work after this because I thought I had more copper. I really don't want to go mine copper while I'm talking about this serious subject of civilizations and how social structures are. Goes in there. And we'll be done with jewelry for now. We did go up a little, so I'm happy about that. And now I'll just create some steel stuff and hopefully be able to go up in level. Alright, so let's talk. So what about tiered social orders? Well, let's consider one more historical pattern. Highly tiered social orders, like the feudal systems of medieval Europe. Under feudalism, society was stratified into strict classes. Kings and nobles at the top enjoying wealth and privilege, while peasants, or serfs, toiled at the bottom with few rights. For a long time, it was justified as the, quote, natural order, unquote, or even ordained by God. But as the years passed, the inequity only grew. By the 18th century, in France, for example, the first estate, or the clergy, and the second estate, the nobility, were lavishly privileged, exempt from most taxes. Whereas the third estate, the commoners, which made up over 90% of the population, paid almost all of the taxes and had little power. Social reform was minimal because the elites had no incentive to change the system that benefited them. This imbalance led to an extreme tension. Well, indeed, the crushing burden on the commoners was one of the most significant causes of the French Revolution in 1789. In a most famous political cartoon from that era, an old peasant is shown literally carrying a priest and a nobleman on his back. A vivid illustration of how lower classes bore the weight of the entire nation. That image encapsulated a growing sentiment. Enough is enough. When injustice reaches a boiling point, people will demand change, even if it has to be violent. So once more, history drives home the lesson: societies built on rigid hierarchies and exploitation are fundamentally unstable. They may endure for centuries, but sooner or later, the cracks will show. So why did civilizations adopt these rigid structures in the first place? It's easy to judge in hindsight, but let's face it. In context, many societies embraced strict hierarchies as a way to maintain order, tradition, or control. Sociologically, hierarchy can bring a sense of stability. Everyone knows their role, and things run smoothly, at least from a perspective of those on top. For example, ancient Indians justified caste divisions through religion and the concept of karma, suggesting that one's birth station was the result of past deeds. Medieval European feudalism was reinforced by the ideology, the great chain of being, quote unquote. Quote, the great chain of being, unquote, where everyone's position, from king to serf, was divinely ordained. In times of chaos or external threat, a strongman ruler or fixed social order can appear to be comforting because it promises security and unity. This is even why in the 20th century, during crises like the economic depressions or wars, populations sometimes turned to authoritarian leaders who offered simple, decisive solutions, even if it meant sacrificing freedom. But once such a system is in place, it does not become, how does it become so entrenched? One word: law. Legal systems have often been used or abused to enforce social divisions, to cement power structures. It's not enough for a ruler to desire absolute power. He needs laws and decrees that grant the power and punish the dissent. In caste-based societies, religious laws dictated what each caste could or couldn't do, ensuring that stepping out of your social rank was literally against the law. In more recent times, think about apartheid in South Africa or the Jim Crow laws of the American South. Explicit legal regimes designed to enforce social divisions and suppress dissent. Or consider the Nuremberg laws in Nazi Germany, which legally classified Jews as a second-class citizen and forbade them from marrying non-Jews, among other restrictions. Law is a double-edged sword. It can protect rights and justice, or it can be twisted to oppress. When rulers control the law, they can wrap injustice in the mantle of legality. An authoritarian regime often turns to judiciary and police into tools of fear. Dissent becomes illegal, and certain groups are targeted, and surveillance invades every aspect of life. In such societies, laws stop being a framework for fairness and instead become the bars of the cage holding the populace in check. And the game has a slight flaw, which is okay. Alright. So, one danger sign is when maintaining power becomes the primary purpose of the laws rather than ensuring the justice or the common good. If you examine the constituents of some one-party states or dictatorships, they often contain clauses that make the ruling party, quote-unquote, eternally in charge or ban opposition, essentially using the highest law to freeze the power structure in place. Authoritarian rulers also pass emergency laws that suspend normal rights whenever they feel threatened. Over time, a culture of fear and compliance sets in. People follow the law not because they believe in its justice, but because they're terrified of punishment. That's a huge red flag for societal decline. When laws are no longer grounded in moral legitimacy, but are merely weapons wielded by those in power, the social contract breaks down. History provides many examples of legal systems gone awry. And before I finish this, I just want to turn to the game real quick because this is kind of a gaming channel. Pax Dei, if one of the things that you want to do is you want to continually improve your skills, your profession. When you're in a big clan, it doesn't necessarily mean you have to do this. But for me, because I'm not in a clan, my professions have to be above 30 for me to build anything worth anything. Markets did change that because I can go adventure, kill opposition like Zebians, Lost Souls, or Inquisitors, and gain money where I can purchase from other players what I don't have or what I need, weapons, armor, etc. All right, so back to the episode. In Imperial China during the I'm gonna butcher this, Qin Dynasty, the regime enforced draconian laws with harsh punishments for even minor infractions, an approach designed to frighten people into obedience. And it worked. Briefly. But the cruelty of the Qin, such as burning books and burying scholars alive, ignited resentment that led to its collapse only after 15 years. Fast forward to the 20th century. The East German Stasi created a legal police state so persuasive that neighbors, even family members, were compelled to inform on each other, resulting in a society paralyzed by mistrust and fear. Not all historical laws and hierarchies were maliciously designed. Some evolved from earlier traditions that made sense in a primitive context, but later became harmful. Early clan-based societies had chiefs and warrior classes to organize defense and food distribution, and then over centuries, these roles calcified into heredity, nobility. Similarly, early cities imposed strict rules in crisis, which then became permanent fixtures even when the crisis passed. The key lesson is that laws and structures must evolve with the times. If they don't, what once was useful can turn into a societal straitjacket. In summary, civilizations adopted rigid structures, often in pursuit of order due to inherited tradition. They became entrenched via legal and cultural reinforcement. But those same mechanisms, law, tradition, authority, became harmful if they stopped serving the people. Society must continuously ask, are our laws serving justice and progress, or merely protecting the powerful? The moment it tilts toward the latter, the seeds of failure are sown. And man, I know I'm in early access. I'm not sure if it's a server disparity where they stop, where you stop crafting within the craft all function, or if it's an actual problem with the coding. I had to take a non-sponsored sip of Zevia. Just for those of you who don't know what Zevia is, it's a 0-calorie soda that has whatever flavoring. But it's great for people who don't want sugar. So 0 sugar, 0 calories, and basically it's just a tasty treat. So it doesn't hurt you anymore. All right, let's you know what? I'm gonna do this. It's gonna hurt because, well, yeah, I'm gonna do it. Let's try it. No matter what. Talio! Okay. Let's continue with the next segment. Interestingly, even in ancient times, not everyone blindly accepted rigid or tyrannical social orders. There were philosophers, thinkers and thinkers who championed more ethical leadership and social harmony. Let's look at two examples. Confucianism in ancient China and Stoicism in Greco-Roman world. Both offered perspectives that, had they been heeded, might have prevented or mitigated some historical failures. So Confucianism, originating with Confucius around 500 BCE, is essentially a philosophy of moral order. Confucius saw society as an extension of the family. He emphasized virtues like ren, benevolence, and and righteousness, and li, as proper conduct. So benevolence, righteousness, and proper conduct. Ren, yi, li. He believed that the ruler should act like a wise and caring father to the people. One famous teaching is that government should lead by virtue and example, not by force. Guide them, quote, guide them with policies and punishments, and the people will evade them and have no shame. Guide them with virtue and propriety, and they will develop a sense of honor and fulfill their roles, unquote. This approach suggests that if a leader is upright and compassionate, the people will willingly follow, negating the need for harsh laws. Confucian thinkers also introduced the idea of the mandate of heaven, the notion that a ruler's right to govern depends on his just behavior. If an emperor became tyrannical, heaven would heaven would withdraw its mandate, often signaled by natural disasters or rebellions. Had more emperors taken these principles to heart, perhaps fewer dynasties would have ended in bloody uprisings. Now we're generalizing, right? But it's an exercise for us to deep dive, right? To give meaning, to think about these huge subjects. All right. So meanwhile, in the West, Stoic philosophers, which they were flourishing around 300 BCE to 200 BCE, taught about justice, duty, and the fundamental equality of all humans. Stoicism emphasizes that all people are endowed with reason and are fragments of the same universal nature. A noteworthy Stoic concept is that how do you say it? Cosmopolis, which is seeing the world as a single city of humankind, where each person has inherent worth. The Stoics, including Seneca, Epictetus, I think it's Epictetus, and Emperor Marcus Aurelius, often spoke against mistreatment of others. Seneca, for instance, critiqued that the brutal treatment of slaves in Rome, reminding slave owners that while slaves were subordinate, they were also human beings deserving of humane treatment. Marcus Aurelius, as a, quote, philosopher king, applied the Stoic ethics to governance by emphasizing humility emphasizing humility, duty, and care for the common welfare. Stoicism taught that true nobility comes from virtue rather than birth, a radical idea in a world of rigid classes. Imagine if more leaders had embraced Stoic humility. Perhaps fewer would have treated their people as mere subjects. Let's move to a more modern perspective. The Enlightenment of Europe in the 17th and 18th century further championed the social change. Thinkers like John Locke and Jean-Jacques Rousseau argued that governments derive their legitimacy from the consent of the governed, and that all men are created equal with natural rights. These ideas challenged divine right, monarchies, and aristocracies, leading to revolutions that dismantled feudal orders in favor of more egalitarian principles. Modern ethical approaches continue this trajectory with participatory democracies, human rights, and decentralization, ensuring that the power is not concentrated but shared among the people. These comparisons remind us that social order is one that balances structure with compassion and authority with accountability. Rigid top-down systems fail because they lose balance. Lessons in both ancient texts and modern theories urge leaders to be virtuous servants of their people and societies, to treat every member as a valued part of the whole. So let's delve a little bit deeper into a few case studies that drive these lessons home. As I look to my screen to make sure that I'm still moving toward a decent amount of experience points. So we've the first one was the Indian caste system. What was the long-term impact? So we've seen how the caste system stratified society, but what about its long-term impact? Despite its official abolition, when India became independent in 1947, and subsequent constitutional protections, caste-based discrimination is still lingering. Affirmative action programs have been implemented, yet the legacy of caste systems persist. Studies show that lower caste communities continue to face challenges in education, employment, and healthcare. This is a tragic example of how an unjust system, once entrenched, casts a long shadow over generations. The caste system's failure was its imposition of an artificial ceiling on human potential and its fracturing of social unity. The lesson here is about inertia. When an unjust system takes root, it can take generations to undo the damage. Meanwhile, millions will continue to suffer. Consider the downfall. All right, let's look at authoritarian regimes. Consider the downfall of Nazi Germany and Imperial Japan in 1945. Both were authoritarian, militaristic states that achieved short-term dominance through fear and violence, yet they ultimately provoked global backlash and self-destruction. After their collapse, both countries had to rebuild their societies from scratch, fundamentally reinventing their governance. The Soviet Union's collapse around 1989-1991, which is another classic case. For decades, the Soviet bloc maintained control through censorship, secret police, and the suppression of dissent. But economic stagnation and public discontent eventually led to the dramatic collapse. Not all authoritarian regimes implode from a grand revolution. Some, like North Korea today, rot slowly under extreme repression and isolation. The lesson is clear. Regimes built on extreme oppression create enormous instability and often collapse under the weight of their own injustice. So let's revisit the idea of tiered social orders by examining the feudal system and its echoes today. In medieval Europe, society was divided into rigid estates, nobles, clergy, and commoners. This system produced deep class divides that stifled innovation and bred resentment. The French Revolution, for instance, was fueled by crushing burden placed on the third estate, which eventually rose in revolt. Today, while we may not have formal feudal systems, and extreme economic inequality in some modern societies creates a de facto tiered order. When the gap between the rich and poor becomes enormous, social mobility declines and society risks replicating the injustices of the past. So what's the key takeaway from the case studies? Well, rigid exclusionary systems may bring short-term order, but they ultimately stifle human potential and breed resentment. A society must strive for systems that are flexible, inclusive, and equitable. So let's talk a little bit more about these case studies. So we know caste systems in general, and we use India as the primary example, but there are other examples around the world. In India is the largest caste system that was in effect for a long period of time. And honestly, one thing I usually would like to do is, if somebody comes over from India, it's one of those, if they're coming over, like, and I'm working with them as a colleague, I don't like to bring up these type of subjects until I know the person. If they were a friend, I'd like to know a little bit more about if the caste system actually still exists, or where it is in the midst of being corrected. It's interesting because as we look through the authoritarian or the caste system, or even from the feudalistic perspectives, we tend to look to democracies or republics that will correct the inequalities and the injustice. If I remember my French Revolution, the one in 1789, I think, the one I'm referring to. Is it 1789? Let me look real quick. I think it was 1789. It was the one right around the United States Revolution. Or I should say the revolution of the colonies against England. I want to say it was 1789. I can't remember that. Well, anyway, the French Revolution around that point in time was bloody. It was absolutely horrific. The United States Revolution of the colonies that revolted against England wasn't as bloody. It was bad, don't get me wrong, but it wasn't near as bad as the French Revolution. Why do I say that? Well, the French, the third class, I think it was called the third estate, was so driven into the ground that their emotion was that of just unbridled anger, disgust, and it was so bad that an eye for an eye was the mantra of that, right? That period. And even Ben Franklin, I believe it was Benjamin Franklin or Thomas Jefferson, noted that how bloody it was, and they, hearing about it an ocean away at that time, which we're talking about, what, 3 months worth of communication lag at a minimum, to hear about it and understand that this would never yield a country that was stable, because you'd have too many people wanting to get revenge. Like A gets revenge on B, B gets revenge on A gets revenge on B again, and B gets revenge on A again, because the revenge, it's a cycle, it never stops. Well, the United States Revolution was an important turning point, I think, in the world, where the United States itself didn't forgive England's transgressions, but since we were separated, knew we needed to work with one of the top powers at the time. And since they didn't have means of news networks and social media, the atrocities could be, let's say, I don't want to say swept under the rug, but they didn't have to be highlighted. And that's important. That's an important distinction from today, because social media and the 24-hour news cycle, all atrocities can be manipulated into being an atrocity, or a true atrocity could be what's a good one? I don't want to say exaggerating. That's not what term I want to use. It was more put on blast, right? You're not exaggerating a thing, but you are using it for you're being able to increase the exposure. I think I have a maybe that. I don't know what I'm gonna make with these, but I'm gonna make some. So I would definitely challenge everyone to note inequalities, because in the next episodes, they're designed to, well, let me get my notes, because this is kind of where we're going to go. So let's wrap up today's exploration. Recap major lessons that we're gathering here. And let me see if I can craft a few more things. It's not gonna help. I'm gonna be going this weekend, or this next weekend, going to the old forest just to get pure iron ore. Okay. So let's recap. Oppressive systems fail. Whether it's a caste system, authoritarian regime, or a tiered social order, history shows us that systems built on oppression eventually sow the seeds of their own destruction. They'll stifle innovation, breed resentment, and collapse under their own weight. Ethical leadership and adaptive institutions. Both ancient wisdom and modern thought emphasize the importance of leadership rooted in virtue and the institutions that evolve with the times. When leaders govern with compassion and justice, they can steer society away from these pitfalls. Inclusivity is essential. Dividing people into fixed hierarchies weakens social cohesion and limits progress. A society that values every individual's contribution is stronger and more resilient. Also, important to remember that failures are not inherently negative. Excuse me. Hopefully you guys didn't hear that. My mic's pretty good. Anyway, that is Zevia. No, I'm kidding. Anyway, in most circumstances, failures provide invaluable lessons and help us avoid repeating mistakes in the future. Just as a student learns from a wrong answer than a right one, societies learn from failures of their past. In these failures, while painful, have been the catalysts for some of the most important social reforms and revolutions. They remind us that progress often comes from learning what not to do. So reflect on these insights. What lessons from history's failures resonate most with you? How can we ensure that our laws and institutions remain instruments of justice and progress rather than tools of oppression? So in our next and final episode of this series, episode 110, we'll integrate all these insights we've discussed, from ancient wisdom to modern research to these hard-earned historical lessons. We're going to craft a vision for a healthier, more resilient society. We've spent many episodes laying the foundations of social change. Now it's time to build the structure of a better future upon those foundations. In episode 110, which is tomorrow, we'll imagine what a society would look like if truly learned from the past, balancing stability with flexibility, authority with freedom, and growth with equality. It's a thought-provoking discussion you won't want to miss. Wow, this episode went really quick. But ultimately, this series, what I'm trying to get at is this series is, or how should I say it a different way? The United States right now is divided. It is falling prey to some of these failures that we've gone tonight. It's up to people, the people, in every country. This is humanity as a whole, right? It's up to everyone. To learn from the past is good. But to live in the now, use what we're going to give you tomorrow to build a better society. There is no reason why humans shouldn't go into a more kind, responsive community that's compassionate. There will be those who try to take advantage, and that is what we give or provide just laws for. I think it was who was it? Blackstone, I think, Blackstone's law, where he said, I'd rather 10 guilty people go free than one innocent man suffer. And that's a true statement, even when we're crafting a utopian society. I consider a utopian society the society of Star Trek back in the day. The Next Generation was probably the one area where I really liked that the original Star Trek had a really good vision in the future. Everybody had a job. Everybody was smart. Everybody wanted to learn. Everybody was motivated to. People did what they wanted to do with their passions. Usually, that was a passion based on learning. I don't remember anybody in that show that was laissez-faire about life. They all wanted to do something. Even those who were lazy, the people around them lifted them up. They didn't make fun of them. They didn't push them down. They didn't ostracize them. They tried to get them involved. They lifted them up. And that's what we have to do, right? And tomorrow we'll talk more about it. But tonight, failures are abundant. I really only went, with 3, but we could go. Probably throughout history we could, we can talk about the Egyptians, we can talk about the Aztecs, we can talk about the Babylonians, we can talk about the Romans, the Empire / the Republic. When did that go wrong? We have the Russians, from the Tsars to the communists. We have all of this. The French. How many revolutions have the French gone through? Sometimes it's a running joke, but I'm not here to joke about stuff like that. What I want is a unified world. I make music. Granted, it's through AI. I help write the lyrics on some of them. Sometimes I write the entire lyric. I come up with the composition and how the instruments flow. And sometimes I let the AI do that. The idea behind that is music is a great unifier. There's a lot of people, I think a majority, who listen to music and like all types of music, from all types of genres, from all types of countries. So I want to be mindful of that as well as I go through these failures, right? We have to accept that failures, in unfortunately, some of these, I say failures are a good thing, but in some of these failures with these countries and these empires, they were tragedies. They were absolute failures in humanity. However, the failures still stick. So the premise of what I'm saying still sticks. We failed. Let's improve. We had to fail. We wouldn't know it was bad if we didn't. We wouldn't know it was good unless we know it's bad. It's the old argument that why does God allow suffering in the world? Well, one of the arguments is if you don't know suffering, you'll never know joy or happiness. And it's harsh, but it's true. It's yin, it's yang, it's wu, the wu way, right? These are fundamental laws of the universe, in my opinion, and maybe we'll get into that. But I write leadership articles for LinkedIn all the time. I'll probably, depending on what kind of audience I get here, I might throw articles on X as well, where there's same leadership. Because I've talked about Wu Wei, I've talked about Confucianism, I've talked about Stoicism. I've talked about, there's a couple Indian philosophers that I talked about, and I got really good reception from it. But it's hard to get the information and write about something and get attention to it. So in writing, I don't expect to be the expert. I expect to put out information, and if that information is somewhat wrong, I expect the communication from somebody who knows more than I do to educate me. Not only just tell me this is what a fact is. No. Tell me this is the fact. By the way, check out this source, and you would have seen that. Again, my failure is going to lead to my eventual expertise. I believe in human societies. I have to. Currently, we're the only one in the universe that we know of. We're not doing so. And I don't think social media is to blame. I think we have an integral part to play in that because of our communication skills, because we don't choose to do proper research or critical think, and that's what I teach on this channel, right? So with that said, I'm going to keep it to an hour tonight. But before we close, please like, comment, and share the show with your friends. Your support helps us spread these important ideas and inspires more people to join the conversation about building just and equitable societies. Thank you for joining me on this journey through the pitfalls of past civilizations. Remember, understanding history is the key to forging a better future. Someone once said, and I'm not sure who gets the credit for this, but learning from the past is an important feature to better the future. So I and again, I can't remember who said it, but basically, we learn in the past, so unless we're doomed to relive it, right? I forget the exact quote. Well, I don't even know who to attribute it to. But that's a true statement, right? The fact that we may be doomed to repeat history because we don't learn from it. And I think somebody a little bit more intelligent would say history doesn't repeat, it rhymes. And that's because of the variability, right? Nothing is exactly the same conditions as it was in the past. So it makes sense. The variables are changing, but it's similar. It's not exact, but it's similar. And I don't, even with that, we're still doomed to repeat a similarity. And that's not good. So, thank you for joining me on this journey through the pitfalls of the past civilizations. I do appreciate you stopping by and listening. Remember, understanding history is the key to forging a better future. Until next time, keep reflecting, stay curious, lead with purpose. Till tomorrow, have a good night, have a good day.
With every step, a lesson learned. From fire's heat to the fields I've turned. The blade and bow, the forge and flame. I sharpen my skills, I play the game. Each day brings a challenge I must face. I train my hands with careful grace. From alchemy's art to the hunter's way, I'll find the strength to seize the day. I carve my path, I walk the line, in the shadow of the ancient sign. Through trial and toil, I'll find my way, learning more with each passing day. The skill of survival, the will to thrive, in a world where the strong survive. I face the night, I'll take the chance. I'm ready to fight, to learn to dance. For every strike and every fall, I'm building my strength, I'm standing tall. In the heart of the wild and the calm of the night, I gather my skills, I'm ready to fight. From the herbs I find to the iron I mold, each lesson learned is a story told. The stars above, they guide my hand. As I hone my craft, I take my stand. In the quiet woods, mountains chill. I push myself, I shape my will. With each new tool and every lore, I'm stronger now than I was before. I carve my path, I walk the line, in the shadow of the ancient sign. Through trial and toil, I'll find my way, learning more with each passing day. The skill of survival, the will to thrive, in a world where the strong survive. I face the night, I'll take the chance. I'm ready to fight, to learn to dance. For every strike and every fall, I'm building my strength, I'm standing tall. In the heart of the wild and the calm of the night, I gather my skills, I'm ready to fight. The road is long, but I won't turn back. The lessons I learned keep me on track. With each new skill, the stronger I grow. In the face of the storm, I let my courage show. I've tasted defeat, I felt the sting, but I rise again with each new spring. For knowledge is power, and wisdom the key. I'm forging my path, I'm breaking free. The skill of survival, the will to thrive, in a world where the strong survive. I'll face the night, I'll take the chance. I'm ready to fight, to learn to dance. For every strike and every fall, I'm building my strength, I'm standing tall. In the heart of the wild and the calm of the night, I gather my skills, I'm ready to fight.